I'll never forget the instant I pressed that garage door remote and heard the satisfying whir of the motor descending the door. There, locked inside, my garage stood Karen's huge black SUV like some sort of metal intruder. I had just returned from work, intent on retrieving my hedge clippers from the garage, when I hit the button and saw the door roll open to expose her vehicle parked squarely in the center of my space engine, off doors locked. Not a soul around me. My initial thinking was confusion, followed by disbelief, then unadulterated rage. Who does something like this? I stood frozen for perhaps 30 seconds, trying to make sense of what I was witnessing. Before I made the choice that would alter everything, I pressed that remote button again and observed the door clunk shut, locking her car in like a sardine in a tin can. Karen Mitchell had been the president of the HOA Maple Grove Estates for 3 years, and in that time, she had made our quiet suburban community her own personal kingdom of petty tyranny. This woman used actual rulers to measure grass-issued infractions for flower pots that were technically the wrong color of terracotta, and once fined Mrs. Henderson $50 because her garden gnome was deemed non-compliant with community aesthetic standards. Karen lived on control, brandishing her clipboard like a scepter, and her laminated rulebook like holy scripture. She rode around in that black SUV with HOA, president, vanity plates, policing for infractions like some sort of suburban bounty hunter. My issues with Karen began 2 weeks prior. Over a decorative mailbox, I had put up a gorgeous wrought iron post with comparable numbers, something that actually enhanced the appearance of the neighborhood. But Karen considered it unapproved and fined me with a violation notice requiring me to replace it with a boring plain mailbox within 72 hours, when I respectfully clarified that the mailbox complied with all postal service specifications and enhanced property values. In fact, she made it her goal to criticize everything I owned, measured my grass at 6 spots, took pictures of my garbage cans from several angles, even tallied up the number of seasonal decorations on my front porch. That Tuesday afternoon, I was outside in my yard when I heard a car door slam in my driveway through my kitchen window. I observed Karen walk up to my front entrance with her clipboard and tape measure, but rather than ringing the doorbell like a normal individual, she saw that my garage door was ajar and just drove her SUV right in. She parked it there like she owned the joint, shut off the engine, and got out to start her latest inspection. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She toured around my garage, snapping pictures of my lawnmower, my tool bench, even my recycling bins, complaining about unauthorized storage techniques. Karen spent a solid 15 minutes in there, sifting through my stuff like she owned the place. She looked over my gardening gear, took notes on my bicycle propped against the wall, and even opened up containers to check out what was in them. The nerve was stunning when she finally emerged, strolling out the front of the garage to check out my mulch beds. She left her SUV parked smack in my space, not pulled back a few feet, not moved to one side, but dead center, occupying the whole area where my car should have been. I watched from my kitchen window, while she spent another 20 minutes in my front yard measuring spaces between plants and snapping photos of my landscaping. She held up plant samples against the light, referring to her rule book several times and jotting notes with the ferocity of a crime scene investigator the entire time. Her car sat in my garage as though she was family when I finally got back home an hour later and found this invasion. Something in me snapped. I had been patient. I had been reasonable. I had done everything by the book. But this crossed every boundary imaginable. Standing there, staring at her SUV parked in my garage, I realized Karen had finally made a mistake. Large enough to count wasn't mulch or mailbox related any longer. This was trespassing in plain English. I pulled out my phone and I called 911, explained calmly to the dispatcher that someone had parked their car in my garage without my permission, and I needed an officer to assist in resolving the situation while I waited. I reviewed my security cameras and ensured that everything had been caught in crystal clear high definition. 20 minutes later, Karen came marching up my driveway with that look of righteous indignation stamped on her face. She was sporting her clipboard and HOA president badge like some sort of sheriff star. The instant she saw my garage door closed, she began pounding on it with her fist, yelling about property girls and community standards. When I came to my front door, she began right away with a rant about my unauthorized mulch and vowed to cite me $500 for city landscaping infractions. Karen insisted they demanded that I open my garage right away so that she could pick up her car and continue her inspection. She told me that as president of the HOA, she was allowed to inspect any property for compliance problems and that I was meddling in official community affairs. Her voice became increasingly loud and higher with every sentence, and she waved around that clipboard like she was leading an orchestra of indignation. She warned me about legal action, emergency HOA meetings, and daily fines until I obeyed her. Demanded I stayed completely calm, and asked Karen when precisely I had granted her permission to park inside my garage. She stuttered something about it being temporarily necessary for her inspection work, and that I should appreciate she was maintaining the community standards high. That's when I let her know that I had security footage of her trespassing on my property, and that police officers were already en route. The color drained from her face, as she knew that she perhaps had made a bad judgment call. Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chan showed up within minutes, and I could see Karen calming herself, adopting her most professional HOA president attitude. She walked up to the officers with her clipboard and badge, identifying herself as the community leader investigating compliance infractions. She told the officers that she had left her car in my garage temporarily while doing official business, and that I was now stopping her from getting her car. The officers listened respectfully, then requested to view my side of things. I provided them with the security camera footage on my cell phone, highlighting the precise time Karen drove her SUV into my garage without authorization, spent time rummaging through my possessions, and then abandoned her vehicle there while she inspected my property. The timestamp unequivocally indicated she had been on my property for well over an hour, without my consent or knowledge. Officer Rodriguez questioned Karen directly if she had sought permission to enter my garage, and her face grew red as she confessed she hadn't, but claimed it was within her purview, as HOA President Officer Chan clarified to Karen that HOA power does not include entering private property without permission, no matter the motive, he advised her. Parking her car inside someone's house was trespassing, and possibly illegal entry subject to intent. Karen's professional poise started to break as she sensed the officers were not impressed with her badge or her clipboard. She began yelling again that community standards mattered more than property rights. That's when Karen made her biggest mistake of the day. She started yelling at Officer Rodriguez that he didn't get HOA law and that she would have his job if he did not make me open up my garage right away. She jabbed her finger in his chest and demanded to talk to his boss, stating I was the actual culprit for entrapping her vehicle. Officer Chen told her to back off and calm down, but Karen was out of her mind now, yelling about violation of the community and threatening everyone in attendance. Officer Rodriguez had had enough. He pulled out his handcuffs and told Karen that she was under arrest for trespassing, harassment, and unauthorized use of private property as he read her Miranda rights. Karen's yelling turned to stunned silence, then desperate begging. She couldn't fathom this was occurring to her. The HOA president, the keeper of community norms, the woman who had bullied a whole neighborhood into submission, was being handcuffed in my driveway, and every neighbor who had ever received a violation notice from her was gazing out their windows. The arrest was front-page news that night, with photos of Karen being led away in handcuffs while still holding her clipboard. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting the following day and voted unanimously to oust her from her office, citing behavior unbecoming of a community leader. Her mugshot showed up in the paper with a story of HOA abuse of power, and overnight Karen Mitchell was the poster child for all that was wrong with homeowner associations. She was sentenced 6 months probation, 200 hours community service, and fined $1,500 in court costs, standing there in that courtroom as the judge handed down her sentence.